The discrimination. On a bright and warm Saturday morning, the Johnson family was excited. They had spent weeks looking for a new place to live, and today was the day they would visit a potential new home. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, along with their two children, Leah and Malik, arrived at the apartment complex with smiles on their faces. The building was well kept, and the neighborhood looked friendly. As they parked their car, Leah, the youngest, looked out the window and pointed. "Look, Dad, there's a playground. Can we go play there later?" Her excitement made everyone smile. Mr. Johnson replied, "Of course, sweetheart. Let's see if we can get the apartment first." The family stepped out of the car, eager to meet Mr. Thompson, the landlord. Mr. Thompson was waiting outside. He was a tall man with a firm handshake and a welcoming smile. As he greeted them, Mrs. Johnson felt relieved. She thought, "Maybe this will be the perfect place for our family." Mr. Thompson led them inside and showed them around the apartment. It had 3 bedrooms, a nice kitchen, and even a balcony where they could have family dinners. "This place is amazing," Lee exclaimed, running from room to room. Malik, who was a bit older, nodded in agreement. He was already imagining where he would put his gaming setup. After the tour, they all sat down with Mr. Thompson in the small office. The excitement in the room was palpable. Mr. Johnson felt hopeful and ready to fill out the rental application. But as they started discussing the terms, he noticed a change in Mr. Thompson's expression. "Just to be clear," Mr. Thompson said, looking at the family closely, "you're the Johnsons, right?" "Yes, that's us," Mr. Johnson replied, his voice filled with optimism. Mr. Thompson's smile faded slightly as he continued, "I just need to inform you that the application process is competitive. We have many interested parties." Mrs. Johnson felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "Oh, I understand. We're really interested in this place, and we would take good care of it." But Mr. Thompson only nodded. "I'll let you know my decision soon." He quickly shuffled the papers and stood up. "Thank you for coming," he said curtly. As the family left, Mrs. Johnson whispered to Mr. Johnson, "Do you think he liked us?" "I hope so," Mr. Johnson replied, though he was unsure. The friendly atmosphere from earlier had vanished. A few days passed, and the Johnsons waited anxiously for a call. When the phone finally rang, Mrs. Johnson picked it up, her heart racing. It was Mr. Thompson. "Hello, this is Mr. Thompson," he said. "I'm sorry, but the apartment is no longer available." "What do you mean?" Mrs. Johnson asked, confusion in her voice. "We saw the for rent sign just last week." "Yes, well, it seems another family has taken it," Mr. Thompson replied. There was a pause, and Mrs. Johnson could hear him shuffle papers. "I can't hold apartments for anyone. That's just how it works." Feeling a mix of anger and disappointment, Mrs. Johnson hung up the phone and turned to her family. "They gave the apartment to someone else," she said, her voice trembling. "Why?" Leah asked, her young face filled with worry. "Were we not good enough?" Mr. Johnson knelt down and hugged his daughter. "You are more than enough, Leah. Sometimes things happen that are unfair." That evening, they gathered in the living room to talk. Mr. Johnson shared what he felt. "I sensed something was off during our meeting with Mr. Thompson. I think he judged us based on our last name." Mrs. Johnson nodded. "I felt it too. It's like he didn't want us there. It's frustrating." As they discussed their feelings, Malik, who was quiet until then, spoke up. "Maybe we should do something about it. We can't just let him treat us like this." "That's a good idea," Mr. Johnson said, his voice firm. "We should seek help. There are organizations that fight against discrimination. We deserve to be treated fairly." The family agreed. They began to research local organizations that could assist them. They felt a mixture of anger and hope as they planned their next steps. It was clear that they were not just fighting for a home, but also standing against unfairness. Malik smiled, feeling empowered. "Together, We can make a difference." The family was determined. They knew the road ahead might be tough, but they were ready to stand up for what was right. The Johnsons were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every family who had faced discrimination. Little did they know, their journey was just beginning. The fight against injustice would lead them down unexpected paths and would change their lives forever. The fight for justice. The next few days were filled with determination for the Johnson family. They were not going to let Mr. Thompson's actions go unchallenged. They gathered all the information they could about housing discrimination, learning about their rights and the laws designed to protect families like theirs. They discovered that many people had faced similar challenges and that they were not alone. One evening, they gathered in the living room. Mr. Johnson held a brochure from the community center in his hand. "We need to make a plan," he said, looking at his family. "We can't just sit back and let this happen. We need to show others that discrimination is not acceptable." Mrs. Johnson nodded in agreement. "We can document our experience and share our story. It might help others who are facing the same issues." Leah, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Can we tell our story on social media? Maybe more people will see it and help us." Malik grinned. "That's a great idea. We can create a video and post it online." The family decided to work together to create a video that shared their experience. They wanted to show the challenges they faced and raise awareness about discrimination in housing. With a smartphone and a few simple props, they set up a small area in their living room to film their story. Mr. Johnson started the video. "Hi, we are the Johnson family. We want to share what happened to us when we tried to rent an apartment." He explained how Mr. Thompson had turned them away and how they felt about it. Mrs. Johnson spoke next, sharing her emotions and the disappointment they faced. Leah and Malik added their thoughts, showing their hope and determination. Once they finished filming, they edited the video together. They added captions and music to make it engaging. After hours of hard work, they were finally ready to share their story with the world. They posted the video on various social media platforms, using hashtags like #FightDiscrimination and #StandTogether. They hoped their story would reach others and inspire them to stand against injustice. As the video gained views, comments began pouring in. Many people were supportive and shared their own experiences. Some expressed their outrage at what had happened to the Johnsons. Others offered advice on how to pursue the case further. One morning, the family woke up to a flurry of notifications. Their video had gone viral, with thousands of views and shares. They were surprised and excited, but also nervous. "This is bigger than we thought," Mrs. Johnson said, her eyes wide. Malik was thrilled. "Maybe we can really make a difference." As the video continued to gain traction, the local news station caught wind of their story. A reporter reached out, asking if the Johnsons would be willing to do an interview. They agreed, understanding that this was another opportunity to spread awareness. On the day of the interview, the family gathered in their living room, nervously preparing to share their story again. The reporter arrived, along with a camera crew. Mr. Johnson greeted them with a smile, but inside, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. During the interview, they shared their experiences in more detail. The reporter asked thoughtful questions, and the Johnsons answered honestly, expressing their feelings and hopes for the future. They spoke about the importance of standing up against discrimination and how it affected families across the community. The reporter finished the interview with a heartfelt message. "The Johnson family is taking a stand against discrimination and inspiring others to do the same. They remind us that everyone deserves a fair chance at housing, regardless of their background." After the cameras left, the family sat together, feeling a sense of pride. They were not just fighting for themselves anymore. They were raising awareness for all families who faced similar challenges. The next day, they received a call from the community center. They had gathered enough information to file an official complaint against Mr. Thompson. The Johnsons felt a wave of relief mixed with nervousness. They knew this was a big step, but they were ready to fight for justice. At the community center, they met with a lawyer who specialized in discrimination cases. The lawyer explained the process and assured them that they had a strong case. "You are doing the right thing," he said. "By standing up, you are helping not just your family but others who have been treated unfairly." The Johnsons felt empowered. They had taken action, and they were not going to stop now. They would continue to share their story and encourage others to join the fight against discrimination. As the weeks went by, the Johnson family remained focused. They attended community meetings, speaking out about their experiences and encouraging others to stand up for their rights. They became known in their community as advocates for justice, inspiring many families to speak out against discrimination. With every step they took, the Johnsons grew closer as a family. They learned the importance of standing together, supporting one another, and fighting for what was right. They realized that their journey was more than just about finding a home. It was about creating a better world for everyone. Little did they know, their actions would lead to unexpected support from the community and create a ripple effect that would change lives. The Johnsons were not just a family fighting against discrimination. They were becoming leaders in a movement for equality and justice. The unexpected support. As the Johnson family continued their fight for justice, they were amazed by the response from their community. News of their story spread beyond social media, inspiring local activists and organizations to reach out and offer their support. One sunny afternoon, while Leah was playing outside, she noticed a small group of people gathered in front of their house. They were holding signs that read "Justice for the Johnsons" and "No more discrimination." Leah ran inside to tell her parents. "Mom, Dad, there are people outside holding signs for us," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson quickly rushed outside, their hearts filled with a mix of surprise and gratitude. The small crowd cheered as they stepped onto their porch. "We just wanted to show our support for your family," one of the women said, holding a sign that read, "Together we stand. We believe in what you're doing, and we want you to know you're not alone." Overwhelmed with emotions, Mrs. Johnson spoke up. "Thank you so much. This means the world to us." Malik joined in. "Can we take a picture with you all?" The crowd agreed, and they gathered together for a group photo, all smiles and laughter. This moment became a turning point for the Johnson family. They realized that their fight against discrimination had sparked a movement in their community. In the following days, more people came forward to support the Johnsons. Local organizations offered their resources, including legal aid and counseling for families facing discrimination. The Johnsons were invited to community meetings where they could share their story and inspire others to join the fight. One evening, the family attended a town hall meeting. The room was filled with people eager to discuss issues of equality and justice. When it was time for the Johnsons to speak, they stood in front of the crowd, their hearts racing. Mr. Johnson took a deep breath and began. "Thank you for allowing us to share our story. We never thought our experience would resonate with so many people. It is essential to stand up against discrimination and fight for everyone's rights." Mrs. Johnson added, "We must work together as a community to ensure that no one else has to face what we did. Every family deserves a home." The audience erupted in applause, showing their support and solidarity. They listened intently as the Johnsons recounted their journey, detailing the discrimination they faced and the steps they were taking to seek justice. After their speech, people approached them, sharing their own experiences of discrimination. Some had faced similar challenges when looking for housing, while others had encountered bias in various aspects of their lives. The Johnsons listened compassionately, offering words of encouragement and support. As the weeks passed, the Johnson family became more involved in their community. They participated in rallies, attended workshops on housing rights, and collaborated with local activists. They felt a sense of purpose, knowing they were making a difference. One day, while they were at the community center, a local news station approached them for an interview. They wanted to hear about the Johnsons' journey and how their story had sparked a larger conversation about discrimination in housing. During the interview, Leah confidently spoke about the importance of standing up for what is right. No one should be treated unfairly because of who they are. We all deserve a place to call home, she said, her voice filled with passion. The reporter nodded, impressed by the family's strength and resilience. The interview aired on local news, reaching even more people. Viewers were touched by the Johnsons' story, and many expressed their desire to help in any way they could. That evening, the family gathered in their living room to watch the news segment. As they saw themselves on the screen, speaking about their experiences, they felt a wave of hope wash over them. They realized that their voices were being heard and that they were not alone in this fight. The next day, they received a call from a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting housing discrimination. They wanted to partner with the Johnsons to create a campaign that would raise awareness and promote equality in housing. "We want to highlight your story as part of a larger initiative," the representative explained. "We believe that together, we can create real change in our community." Excited and honored, the Johnsons agreed to collaborate. They spent the following weeks working closely with the organization, brainstorming ideas and planning events to spread their message. As they prepared for a community event, they realized how far they had come since that fateful day when Mr. Thompson had turned them away. They had transformed their pain into purpose, and their fight for justice had united their community. On the day of the event, the Johnsons stood proudly in front of a crowd that had gathered to support their cause. They shared their story again, but this time it was not just about their personal struggle. It was about a collective fight for justice and equality. The event featured speakers, music, and activities for families. The atmosphere was filled with hope and determination. The Johnsons looked around at the smiling faces, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the support they had received. As the sun set, the Johnson family knew that their journey was far from over. They had started a movement, and they were committed to continuing the fight against discrimination. They believed that change was possible, and together, they would create a brighter future for everyone. As they shared their experiences, the audience listened intently. They talked about the barriers they faced and the importance of speaking out. The response was overwhelming. Families approached them afterward, thanking them for their courage and sharing their own stories of discrimination. Feeling empowered, the Johnsons decided to take their advocacy further. They organized a community event focused on housing rights, inviting local experts to speak and provide resources. The event would serve as a platform for families to connect and learn about their rights. The day of the event arrived, and the community center was buzzing with activity. Tables were set up with information on housing rights, legal resources, and local organizations that could provide support. Families arrived, eager to learn and connect with others. As the Johnsons welcomed guests, Leah handed out flyers. "Come join us," she shouted with excitement. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and soon the room was filled with laughter and conversations. When it was time for the speakers to present, the Johnsons took the stage. They shared their story once more, but this time, they focused on the strength of the community. They emphasized how important it was for everyone to stand together against discrimination. "Together, we are stronger," Mrs. Johnson declared, her voice full of passion. After the presentation, the audience erupted in applause. Many families approached them, expressing gratitude for the information and support they had received. One woman with tears in her eyes said, "You've inspired me to speak out. I faced discrimination, and I felt alone. But now I know I can fight back." Mr. Johnson smiled warmly. "You're not alone anymore. We're all in this together." As the event came to a close, Leah felt proud of her parents. She realized that they were making a difference, not just for their family, but for others in their community. Later that evening, the Johnson family gathered around their dinner table, reflecting on the day. "What a day!" Mr. Johnson exclaimed, his face glowing with happiness. "I can't believe how many people came together." Mrs. Johnson nodded, her heart full. "It feels good to know we're helping others." This is just the beginning. Leah chimed in. Can we have more events like this? It was so fun. Mr. Johnson laughed. Of course. We'll plan more in the future. It's important for our community to stay connected and informed. As they cleared the table, they felt a sense of fulfillment. Their journey had been challenging, but it had led them to this moment. A moment of hope, connection, and empowerment. Days turned into weeks, and the Johnson family continued their advocacy efforts. They formed a local support group, encouraging families to share their stories and experiences. The group quickly grew, becoming a safe haven for those facing discrimination in housing. One evening, as they gathered for a meeting, the room buzzed with energy. Families shared their challenges and successes, offering support and advice to one another. Leah, now a little older, often assisted by organizing activities for the children attending. During one meeting, a man named Mr. Brown stood up to share his experience. I faced discrimination when I applied for an apartment, just like the Johnsons. It felt hopeless at times, but hearing your story inspired me to keep fighting. The Johnsons smiled, proud of the impact they were having. They knew that their story had sparked a movement, and together they were creating change. As the weeks passed, the Johnson family found themselves growing closer. They had built a home not just for themselves but for a community that rallied around them. The warmth of their new house was filled with laughter, love, and the promise of a brighter future. With every passing day, they became more determined to make a difference in the world around them. Their journey was far from over, but together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. We found a beautiful house for your family. It's in a welcoming neighborhood, and the owners are excited to meet you, Mr. Harris announced, his voice full of enthusiasm. The family erupted in cheers, their excitement filling the room. Leah jumped up and down. We have a house. Mr. Johnson shook Mr. Harris's hand vigorously. Thank you. This means everything to us. As they discussed the details, the Johnsons felt a sense of relief and hope for their future. They realized that their fight was not in vain. Their community had rallied behind them, and they were moving forward. The next day, the family visited their new potential home. It was charming, with a white picket fence and a spacious yard where Leah could play. They met the owners, a kind couple who welcomed them warmly. As they walked through the house, Mrs. Johnson's heart swelled with joy. This could really be our home, she whispered to Mr. Johnson. He nodded, his eyes gleaming. I can see us here, creating new memories. After much anticipation, the Johnson family signed the lease for their new home. They couldn't believe how quickly their situation had changed. They knew they had much to celebrate, not just for themselves, but for all the families facing similar challenges. That evening, they held a small gathering to celebrate their new beginning. Friends, family, and supporters came together, sharing laughter and joy. During the celebration, Mr. Johnson raised his glass. To new beginnings and to a community that stands together. Everyone cheered, and Leah added, and to making sure no one else has to go through what we did. As the night wore on, the Johnsons reflected on their journey. They had faced adversity, but they had also discovered strength and support in each other and their community. Together, they were ready to create a future filled with hope and happiness. The new beginning. As the Johnson family settled into their new home, excitement filled the air. It was not just a house. It was a symbol of their victory over discrimination and the start of a new chapter in their lives. They spent their days unpacking boxes, painting walls, and making the space truly their own. Leah was especially thrilled. She had her own room for the first time, decorated with bright colors, and her favorite posters. "This is my room," she exclaimed, jumping on her bed. "I can't believe it." Mr. and Mrs. Johnson smiled at each other, feeling grateful for the chance to provide a safe and loving environment for their daughter. They knew that this home would be a place where Leah could thrive. One afternoon, while they were unpacking in the backyard, they decided to plant a small garden. Mrs. Johnson had always dreamed of having a garden where they could grow vegetables and flowers. Leah joined in, eager to help dig holes and plant seeds. "This is going to be the best garden ever," Leah said, her face beaming with joy. As they worked together, laughter and chatter filled the air. Mr. Johnson paused for a moment and looked around the yard. "I'm so proud of us. This place feels like home," he said, taking a deep breath of fresh air. But their happiness was tinged with the memory of what they had been through. Although they had found a new place to live, the fight against discrimination was still ongoing. The Johnsons knew they wanted to use their experience to help others in similar situations. With this in mind, Mrs. Johnson contacted the local community center to see how they could get involved. "I think we should share our story," she told Mr. Johnson. "It might inspire others to stand up for their rights." "Absolutely," he agreed. "If we can help even one family avoid what we went through, it will be worth it." The next week, the Johnsons attended a community meeting at the center. They met with other families and local leaders who were passionate about fighting housing discrimination. The atmosphere was filled with energy and determination as everyone shared their experiences and ideas. When it was their turn to speak, Mrs. Johnson took a deep breath. "Thank you for having us here. We want to share our story and the support we received from the community. It made a huge difference for us." Mr. Johnson added, "Discrimination is real, but so is hope. We can make changes together." As they shared their experiences, the audience listened intently. They talked about the barriers they faced and the importance of speaking out. The response was overwhelming. Families approached them afterward, thanking them for their courage and sharing their own stories of discrimination. Feeling empowered, the Johnsons decided to take their advocacy further. They organized a community event focused on housing rights, inviting local experts to speak and provide resources. The event would serve as a platform for families to connect and learn about their rights. The day of the event arrived, and the community center was buzzing with activity. Tables were set up with information on housing rights, legal resources, and local organizations that could provide support. Families arrived, eager to learn and connect with others. As the Johnsons welcomed guests, Leah handed out flyers. "Come join us," she shouted with excitement. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and soon the room was filled with laughter and conversations. When it was time for the speakers to present, the Johnsons took the stage. They shared their story once more, but this time, they focused on the strength of the community. They emphasized how important it was for everyone to stand together against discrimination. "Together, we are stronger," Mrs. Johnson declared, her voice full of passion. After the presentation, the audience erupted in applause. Many families approached them, expressing gratitude for the information and support they had received. One woman with tears in her eyes said, "You've inspired me to speak out. I faced discrimination, and I felt alone. But now I know I can fight back." Mr. Johnson smiled warmly. "You're not alone anymore. We're all in this together." As the event came to a close, Leah felt proud of her parents. She realized that they were making a difference, not just for their family, but for others in their community. Later that evening, the Johnson family gathered around their dinner table, reflecting on the day. "What a day!" Mr. Johnson exclaimed, his face glowing with happiness. "I can't believe how many people came together." Mrs. Johnson nodded, her heart full. "It feels good to know we're helping others. This is just the beginning." Leah chimed in, "Can we have more events like this? It was so fun." Mr. Johnson laughed. "Of course, we'll plan more in the future. It's important for our community to stay connected and informed." As they cleared the table, they felt a sense of fulfillment. Their journey had been challenging, but it had led them to this moment. A moment of hope, connection, and empowerment. Days turned into weeks, and the Johnson family continued their advocacy efforts. They formed a local support group, encouraging families to share their stories and experiences. The group quickly grew, becoming a safe haven for those facing discrimination in housing. One evening, as they gathered for a meeting, the room buzzed with energy. Families shared their challenges and successes, offering support and advice to one another. Leah, now a little older, often assisted by organizing activities for the children attending. During one meeting, a man named Mr. Brown stood up to share his experience. "I faced discrimination when I applied for an apartment, just like the Johnsons. It felt hopeless at times, but hearing your story inspired me to keep fighting." The Johnsons smiled, proud of the impact they were having. They knew that their story had sparked a movement, and together they were creating change. As the weeks passed, the Johnson family found themselves growing closer. They had built a home not just for themselves but for a community that rallied around them. The warmth of their new house was filled with laughter, love, and the promise of a brighter future. With every passing day, they became more determined to make a difference in the world around them. Their journey was far from over, but together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The power of unity. As the weeks turned into months, the Johnson family settled into their new routine. Their home was a hub of activity and joy, filled with laughter and the aroma of home-cooked meals. Leah had made new friends in the neighborhood, and she loved having playdates in her backyard. But the Johnsons were not just focused on their own happiness. They were dedicated to uplifting others in their community. The support group they had started was thriving, with more families attending each week. People came together to share their stories, struggles, and victories, and the atmosphere was one of solidarity and encouragement. One sunny Saturday, the Johnsons organized a community picnic to celebrate their achievements and to bring more awareness to the fight against housing discrimination. They wanted to show that their neighborhood was a place of unity and strength. Leah was especially excited about the picnic. She helped her parents plan games, activities, and even a talent show for the kids. "This is going to be the best day ever," she exclaimed as she made colorful posters to hang around the park. On the day of the picnic, families from all over the neighborhood gathered in the park. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as children ran around, playing games, while adults set up tables filled with delicious food. The Johnsons welcomed everyone with smiles, feeling grateful for the strong sense of community they had built. As the sun shone brightly, the picnic kicked off with fun games like sack races and tug-of-war. Leah led her friends in a game of freeze tag, her laughter ringing through the air. The joy was infectious, and soon the adults joined in, reliving their childhood. After everyone had enjoyed the games, it was time for the talent show. Families took turns showcasing their skills, from singing and dancing to storytelling. The Johnsons were amazed at the hidden talents in their community. When it was Leah's turn, she took the stage with confidence. "I'm going to sing a song about friendship," she announced, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She sang a sweet melody about unity and love, and everyone cheered when she finished. The sense of pride and support was palpable, and Leah felt a warm glow in her heart. As the talent show continued, the local news reporter arrived, drawn by the energy and enthusiasm of the gathering. She started interviewing families about their experiences with discrimination and the importance of coming together as a community. "Today's picnic is all about celebrating our strength and unity," Mrs. Johnson told the reporter. "We want to show that when we support each other, we can overcome anything." The reporter nodded, impressed by the sense of camaraderie she witnessed. "It's inspiring to see a community come together like this. What do you hope to achieve with events like this?" "We want to raise awareness about housing discrimination and create a safe space for families to share their stories," Mr. Johnson replied. "Together, we can make a difference." As the picnic wrapped up, the families gathered for a group photo. Everyone smiled brightly, holding hands and standing together. It was a moment of unity that captured the essence of their journey. Later that night, as the Johnsons relaxed at home, they reflected on the day. "Today was amazing," Leah said, still buzzing with excitement. "I love seeing everyone so happy." Mr. Johnson nodded, feeling proud. "We've built something special here. This community is stronger than ever." Mrs. Johnson added, "And it's just the beginning. We'll keep organizing events and supporting each other." With renewed determination, they began planning their next steps. They decided to host workshops focused on educating families about their rights and how to advocate for themselves. They wanted to ensure that everyone in the community felt empowered to stand up against discrimination. As the weeks passed, the Johnsons continued to build connections with local organizations that fought for housing rights. They invited guest speakers to their meetings and workshops, creating a platform for families to learn and grow together. The response was overwhelming, and soon, people from neighboring communities began to attend as well. One day, while organizing their next workshop, Mrs. Johnson received a call from a local news station. They had heard about the Johnsons' efforts and wanted to feature their story. Excitement bubbled inside her. "This is a chance to reach even more people," she exclaimed to her husband. On the day of the interview, a reporter arrived at their home. She was greeted by Leah, who proudly showed her the garden they had planted. "We're growing vegetables," Leah said with a big smile, "and we're making our community better." The reporter interviewed the Johnsons about their journey, their community work, and the importance of fighting discrimination. The story aired later that week, shining a light on their efforts and encouraging others to take action in their own communities. The response was incredible. Families reached out to the Johnsons, inspired by their story. They wanted to learn how to start similar initiatives in their neighborhoods. The Johnsons felt a sense of purpose, knowing their journey was helping others find their voices. Through their tireless work, the Johnsons were not just changing their own lives, but also transforming their community. They were creating a ripple effect of awareness, compassion, and resilience. As the months went by, the Johnson family remained a symbol of hope and strength in their community. They continued to hold events, raise awareness, and support those in need. They learned that change was possible when people came together with a shared purpose. One evening, as they gathered for dinner, Mr. Johnson looked around the table and said, "I'm so proud of how far we've come. Our family has become a beacon of hope for others." Mrs. Johnson nodded in agreement. "Together, we are creating a better world for Leah and all the children in our community." Leah smiled, feeling proud of her parents and their mission. She understood the importance of standing up for what was right and knew that she could be a part of something bigger than herself. With their hearts full of hope, the Johnsons knew their journey was far from over. They were committed to the fight against discrimination and were excited to see what the future held for their community. Together, they were stronger, and together, they would continue to make a difference, the lasting impact. The months rolled on, and the Johnson family had become a vital part of their community. Their workshops and community events had sparked a movement, drawing in more families and individuals willing to stand up against discrimination. Leah was growing up in an environment rich with love, support, and a sense of purpose. She felt proud to be part of something much bigger than herself. One day, Mrs. Johnson received an unexpected call from a local school principal. "We've been following your story, and we want to invite you to speak at our school assembly," he said. "We believe your message of unity and resilience can inspire our students." Mrs. Johnson's heart swelled with pride. She knew this was a great opportunity to reach younger generations and teach them about the importance of standing up for what is right. She immediately called Mr. Johnson, who was equally excited. "This is our chance to make a difference in the lives of kids who might face discrimination in the future," he said. On the day of the assembly, Leah was buzzing with excitement. She had prepared a speech about her experiences, wanting to share her journey with her peers. She felt a mix of nerves and anticipation as they walked into the auditorium, filled with students chatting and laughing. The assembly began with a few performances from the school choir, and then it was time for the Johnson family to take the stage. As they stood in front of the crowd, Leah felt her heart race. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Johnson, and I want to tell you a story about my family and our journey." She glanced at her parents, who nodded encouragingly. "When we moved here, we faced a lot of challenges. But we didn't give up. We believe that everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. As she spoke, Leah noticed the students listening intently, their eyes wide with interest. She shared how they had worked together to create a community of support where everyone could share their stories and uplift each other. The principal stepped in to add, "What the Johnsons have done is incredible. They remind us that change starts with each one of us. If you see someone being treated unfairly, don't be silent. Speak up. Support each other." The audience erupted in applause. Leah felt a surge of happiness. They were making an impact, and it was clear that the message was resonating with her peers. After the assembly, many students approached Leah, asking her questions and sharing their own experiences. It was a heartwarming moment, and Leah felt grateful to have inspired others. She realized that their efforts were not just about fighting discrimination. They were also about building a brighter future for everyone. Weeks later, the Johnson family received more recognition for their work. The local news station wanted to do a follow-up story on their community initiatives, highlighting the positive changes they had made. The Johnsons felt proud but humble. They just wanted to help others. When the news segment aired, it featured interviews with families who had attended the workshops, sharing how they had found strength and support through the Johnsons' efforts. "We didn't know where to turn until we met the Johnson family. They showed us that we are not alone," one father said, his voice filled with emotion. As the segment concluded, it showed Leah in her garden, explaining how they were teaching kids about growing food together. "We believe that if we can grow things together, we can grow a better community too," she said with a big smile. The Johnson family continued to organize events, inviting local leaders and activists to speak. Their living room became a hub of planning and preparation, filled with ideas and laughter. They were now collaborating with schools and community centers, creating a network of support that extended beyond their neighborhood. One afternoon, while brainstorming ideas for their next event, Mr. Johnson said, "What if we organize a community service day? We can clean up the parks, plant trees, and show our neighbors how we can make our community beautiful together." Leah's eyes lit up. "And we can invite the school. It'll be a fun day for everyone." Excitement bubbled in the room as they planned out the details. They reached out to local businesses for support, and soon enough, volunteers from all over the community signed up to join the service day. When the day arrived, families gathered with gloves and trash bags, ready to work together. The sun shone brightly as laughter and chatter filled the air. Leah led her friends in games while the adults focused on cleaning up the park. As they worked, Leah noticed an elderly woman watching them from her porch. She seemed hesitant but curious. Leah ran over to her. "Would you like to join us? We're making the park nice for everyone." The woman smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I'd love to help." She grabbed a pair of gloves and joined in, chatting with Leah about her favorite flowers and the memories she had of the park as a child. By the end of the day, the park was transformed. Families gathered for a picnic, celebrating their hard work. Leah felt a deep sense of pride as she looked around at the smiling faces. They had created a community that valued kindness, support, and togetherness. As the sun began to set, Leah's parents hugged her tightly. "You did an amazing job today, sweetheart," Mrs. Johnson said. "You're making a difference in people's lives." Leah beamed with happiness. She understood now that the power of unity was stronger than any challenge they faced. They were not just a family. They were a movement, a force for change. The Johnsons knew their journey was far from over, but they felt ready for whatever lay ahead. Together, they had built a foundation of hope and resilience, and they were committed to spreading that message for years to come. With renewed determination, they looked toward the future, knowing that as long as they stood together, they could face anything. They would continue to fight for justice, inspire others, and create a world where kindness and love would always prevail.